This podcast replay is brought to you by AccidentLawFirm.com. For truck, motorcycle, and rideshare accidents, call Bobby Nunez, 305-444-4407. AccidentLawFirm.com.
Fantasy football right now with my man Andy Behrens from Yahoo Fantasy. Andy, how you doing, my man?
I'm good. I've got all the Lamar Jackson, so I'm feeling pretty good right now. I'm took a nice little lead in most of my fantasy semis, so things are good.
Yeah, me too. I'm in the semis also, and I have Lamar Jackson, and without even trying, so it's a beautiful thing. And what I mean by that is, that's my Sirius league, and I'm in the league with all the guys from the Sirius Radio. And the night of the draft, I was in the middle of a couple sales meetings for this show. And so it was, okay, do I worry about my draft or do I worry about my freaking career right now? You know what I mean? And so it was like career or fantasy. So I go, you know what? I make a career out of talking about fantasy. Screw that. So the team was drafted on autopilot. And
oh my gosh.
Wow. And Lamar is one of my guys. So in autopilot fashion, I have not made one transaction, one move, one benching, nothing. The lineup that was drafted is the lineup that's there right now. Bye weeks, everything. It played all the way through, and it's in the semifinals. I didn't even touch the lineup on the bye week of Lamar. Okay, I just left it like
I gotta say this is not recommended. This is not something that none of our listeners at home need to practice these fantasy habits. That is gross misconduct. But I'm glad it worked out. But that's how powerful Lamar Jackson has been this year. We're actually it's way too early to have this conversation. But what to do with him in draft next year is going to be an incredible argument because it's always been wrong to take a quarterback number one overall. That has literally always been wrong. People have made the case before. It never works out. But we've never had a quarterback who is also
a running back.
The league. Yeah, absolutely. He's like an RB2 right now, just on his rushing stats. He would be the RB 15 or 16 right now. Yeah. We've not seen a player quite like this.
No, we've never seen anything like Lamar. And you'll take him early, and what will happen is, if you're smart, you take another quarterback early is what's going to happen to you if you do that. Because of the running, he's always going to be at risk because eventually it is kind of a time bomb that one day somebody's going to lay a lick on him that's not going to be good, unfortunately.
He's very good at stepping out of bounds. Like this version of Lamar Jackson is like blindingly fast, so he gets every yard that's there. And then he gets himself out of trouble pretty well. The one thing that is probably not going to be sustainable no matter what is that he's throwing a touchdown pass on 9% of his throws, which is just that's not something that never lasts. That was, Mahomes was around that last year. Matt Ryan had a year like that, but nobody does that year after year after year. It's never happened in the history of the NFL. So that is definitely going to change. So we have to value him. We have to think of him as somebody who's probably going to throw 25 touchdown passes. Not, he's going to finish this season with 40 if he keeps this up.
Well, we're having some issues on YouTube today, so we're not live on YouTube. We're actually on Facebook, but we don't have the rest of the show potted in, so they don't hear you. But we do have already a question popping up there on Facebook. Ernie Cabrera is asking Carson Wentz or Ryan Tannehill.
Oh, man, I love this question. I absolutely love this question. Now, to go without saying, Wentz has a great matchup. He's facing Washington. Mm-hmm. The issue for Wentz, of course, is that all of his skill players are hurt. Alshon Jeffrey is done for the year. He's on IR. We don't think that Nelson Aguilar is going to be able to play. So he's pretty much throwing to Zach Ertz and some scrubs. Some of those scrubs are okay. Greg Ward's fine. But I am going to lean Tannehill in what should be a really, really fun matchup. So Houston on the season has been relatively friendly, especially lately, to opposing quarterbacks. They have the sixth most generous pass defense in the league. And I don't know how you argue against Tannehill right now. A.J. Brown is going to be a star. He looks terrific. No team is any better off of play action than Tennessee because they have the big Derrick Henry threat coming at you. Defenses have to game plan for that. And it's turned Tannehill into one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in the league. Ryan Tannehill right now is averaging 9.8 yards per pass attempt. That is a first down every time he's throwing the football. He leads the league in yards per attempt. He leads the league in passer rating. He is completing almost 73% of his throws, and he's got a great matchup. So I'm going to go Tannehill here. He's done multiple touchdowns every week.
Ernie, since you can hear me, he is going with Ryan Tannehill there. He is going Tannehill over Carson Wentz. All right, if you have any other questions while you're watching there on Facebook, any fantasy questions, if you're in the playoffs, you can send them in, post them there. We'll ask Andy Behrens here from Yahoo Fantasy. Adam Thielen, what are you thinking about Adam Thielen right now with the injury? Who steps up if he doesn't play?
Yeah, you know what I can't get out of my mind is the last time that he came back, and we think he's going to be good to go in this one. We think he's going to start. But the last time we saw him on the field, he re-aggravated that injury pretty early in the game. He had to limp off and then missed several more weeks. So that is my primary concern. I also worry that this is going to put a big dent in the Kyle Rudolph bonanza, right? Like, Rudolph's been really good over the last month or so with Thielen out. He's been the primary red zone target, and that was kind of Thielen's role before, and I would imagine that Thielen is going to reclaim that to some extent. We've also seen that Olabisi Johnson is probably the guy that picks up a handful of targets when Thielen is out. But, again, I think Thielen is going to go. I'm just so worried about, I'm not going to rank him where I normally would, a healthy Adam Thielen, which would be like a top 12-ish fantasy receiver. For me, it's going to be outside that top 20. Again, I worry about the possibility of an aggravation.
All right. If you want to get in on the accidentlawfirm.com text line, it's 786-322-1105. Now, Nick also asked you on Twitter, I think you answered it, Mixon, Aaron Jones, Mozart, James White, and start Tannehill or Josh Allen. And you answered Jones, Mozart, Mixon, and Tanny, good luck. But then he followed up with Mixon versus the Pats over Mostart. Is that... Are you there? Are you with that? Mixon over versus the Pats over Mostart? Because Mostart now has become the guy.
I think Raheem Mostert is the most obvious start in that question. Well, okay, Aaron Jones is the most obvious start.
Okay.
After that, it's got to be Mostert, who obviously he was fantastic against the Saints. Saints pretty good run defense. He had no issue with him. He's just a burner. Really fun to watch. So was Matt Breida. That's an incredible 1-2 punch, and they've kind of relegated Tevin Coleman to afterthought status. They're both really good. He's averaging right around 6 yards per carry on the season. It's been a terrific offense, and they get a really friendly matchup at home against Atlanta. Just a great spot for him. It's not going to surprise me at all if he's a top 10 fantasy back this week.
All right, I got a question for you. It's the playoffs, so you need something reliable. This team sucks. This quarterback takes chances. This receiver is been injury prone in his history, but this year really hasn't been too injury prone. And now he has a concussion that he's coming back from. His name is Devontae Parker. He's had a great year, and he's playing against the Giants this week. How do you handle that in fantasy?
Yeah, really fun situation for Parker because he's obviously been a hyped player in 3 seasons past. This reminds me, there's not a lot of comps for somebody who breaks out in his 6th season or whatever this is. But the one that comes to mind is Brandon Lloyd, who was always a tease of talent and then finally broke out in his 8th year in the NFL.
Right.
That's kind of what we've seen from Parker. The dominant physically. Fitzpatrick is looking for him all over the place. It sounds like he shed the no contact jersey today, which is a pretty good sign that he's going to clear the protocol and be fine to go against the Giants. And then obviously it's a blow up matchup against the Giants. You saw what Carson Wentz just did against New York. Even though he had no real credible receivers to throw to, right? It was just a couple of tight ends and some dudes who are normally special teamers, and he had a big game against them. So, yeah, I think Devontae Parker, pretty much anytime he's good to go, is going to be a top 20 fantasy receiver.
Ah, there you go. So you can count on Parker in the playoffs. I like it. All right.
You know what else I need this week is I got to start Patrick Laird somewhere, and so I'm really anxious to see what Laird can do. At the very least, I need 4 or 5 catches out of him, which seems doable. The one skill that he appears to have. So I don't know that he's the back of the future for you guys, but I need him to be a pretty risky fantasy asset over the next couple of weeks.
Is it a PPR league?
It is a PPR, which
okay.
It's a full PPR too, which I think is what helps me. That gives him a little floor because he's definitely going to catch 4 or 5 balls.
Right, exactly. That because he's a really good receiver out of the backfield. That's the one thing that I would tell you that I like that for you. That I think, and again, bad team. You're going up against the Giants, so that is, obviously extremely important right now. So that is really cool that you're able to do that. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's out. Is there a guy you would lean on in a playoff week after that?
I assume we're talking about the Steelers roster,
yes.
And the short answer here is, so you got to realize they're facing Buffalo. I know they're at home. You feel okay about that, but both Buffalo and Pittsburgh are 2 of the top 5 defenses in the league, both in terms of passing yards against them and in terms of DVOA from Football Outsiders. They're just both really good. Tre'Davious White is a lockdown corner. This game has the lowest over-under of the week. It's like 36.5 points, something like that. So Vegas is not expecting many points to be scored in this one. We've seen flashes, certainly, from James Washington. We've seen flashes from Deontay Johnson, who was great last week, a couple of touchdowns, one on special teams. But would I actually want to start either one of them in a playoff matchup in a game that could very well end 17-12? I would love to avoid this game if I could. I'd start the defenses, and anybody else would be pretty much a last resort.
How do you handle Kerryon Johnson, who's just coming back from an injury, and he's facing the Broncos this week? Can you count on him?
Well, Kerryon is not actually eligible to play, I believe, until week 16. He was also, the Lions' run game was just absolutely dreadful with Kerryon Johnson. So I can't imagine in my fantasy championship, unless I was dealing with just crazy injuries, I can't imagine having the confidence to roll with him because we've seen them also go with a pretty sketchy committee. It's been J.D. McKissick, it's been Bo Scarborough handling a lot of the early down stuff. I don't think Scarborough will go away because he's great in short yardage situations. So I would imagine they get Kerryon Johnson back involved, but not in the capacity that he had before, not in that sort of full workload role. I would think that he would come back maybe to double-digit touches, but that doesn't necessarily equate to a whole lot when you're tied to Detroit's offense.
Andy Behrens, of course, joins us every week. You could follow him on Twitter at Andy Behrens. Andy, is there a Philadelphia receiver, because I see Aguilar is also injured, and they got all kinds of injuries. Would you even count on a Philly receiver for the playoffs?
Well, somebody that you could take a look at in a very deep league would probably be Greg Ward, who actually saw 3 targets in the end zone last week. Nifty enough player, more of a special teamer. But if he's going to see 8 to 10 targets, he gets pretty interesting. And I'll throw out one more name, not tied to the Eagles offense, but somebody who's playing in the Monday night game. Fun Monday night game between the Colts and Saints. The Colts have a receiver named Marcus Johnson, who's just basically a big play threat. 160 receiving yards over the last 2 games. Also drew a long PI penalty in the last one. And he's got a shot at a long touchdown against a pretty leaky Saints pass defense. I'm not going to be he would be my pivot. If I had one of these guys like Will Fuller, like anybody who's questionable for the Sunday games, I would want to have somebody like Marcus Johnson on the roster as sort of a pivot if they can't go.
I was going to ask you, Will Fuller, Jared Cook, these are limited guys. These are guys that are dealing with some injuries, concussions. How do you handle these guys going into a playoff week? Because Will Fuller's a guy that can help you win a game easily, but that hamstring will pop up and he's constantly injured. So how do you depend on a guy like that in a playoff week?
Well, I mean, he's the essence of not dependable.
I know.
So I don't know that depend on him is exactly the way I'd look at it, but I've got him kind of penciled into at least one lineup right now. A little part of me thinks that they held him, he had some pain and then they held him out. for what is a huge division game for them against Tennessee. If he plays, you really have to roll with him, because remember earlier this season, it feels like it was a million years ago, but he had one of the biggest blow-up games of any receiver on the year. That is his ceiling in any given week. Is going to be double-digit touchdowns and double-digit touches and multiple touchdowns. That's his upside. So in the fantasy playoffs, you kind of got to swing for the fences a little bit. So I think he's a pretty strong play again, as long as he's active.
All right, Andy, give me anything else. Is there a sleeper out there? It's the playoffs. So you gave us already a couple there. Is there somebody else that we haven't talked about that might be a little under the radar that could really help out in the playoffs?
Yeah, again, I like Marcus Johnson in that Monday Nighter. Kind of like, this isn't going to be the strongest endorsement of Rashard Perriman, but he's the guy who's going to step in to, we think, a starting role with Mike Evans now down for the year. So he's going to be playing for Tampa. We're going to see Justin Watson for Tampa as well. If those guys are seeing 6 or 7 targets, there's a pretty good chance they find the end zone. Of course, we need Jameis to be something close to 100% with a fracture in his hand. Everybody is sort of patched together right now, but there's opportunity in Tampa Bay, I will say that.
Follow him on Twitter at Andy Behrens, and tell him about Sunday, my brother, before they play their playoff games.
Yeah, join us. 90 minutes before kickoff on Sunday. We're going to go over late-breaking injury news. We're going to go over any weather situations around the NFL. And we're going to be answering sit-start questions for about 90 minutes. It's a really fun show, Fantasy Football Live on Yahoo Sports.
And a must-follow on Twitter at Andy Behrens. Andy, as always, Studley, my brother, may the big win be yours this weekend.
Good luck to everyone. Thanks, Big-O.
You got it, baby. There you go. Andy Behrens. I shouldn't say big win for Andy. I should say big wins, because he's probably like in 77 leagues. This year, I only got in one, and I didn't even try.
I think you're one short. He's on 78, man.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I only got in one, and I didn't even pay attention to the one. And I'm a game away from the Super Bowl.
And you're in the semis.
Yes, it's awesome. It's awesome. I think I'm already making money. And I might win this week because he got 5 touchdowns. So I don't even know who is in the rest of my lineup.
What do you have, 70, 80 yards rushing on top of it? Do you get bonus for quarterbacks going over 50? Is there any of that?
I don't know what the bonus is at.
You don't even know what the scoring system.
No.
Are you?
Well, I know the scoring system. I've been in the league several years.
You know what?
I've been in the league several years.
Hold on.
I've been in the Super Bowl the last 2 years that I've been in the league. I won it and lost it.
Yeah. What seeds were you when you got to the Super Bowl?
1 and 2.
Oh, because the one seed. If you're the 1 seed, you normally.
I was 1 and 2.
Normally don't win. It's usually the 2, 3, 4, 5. However,
I was the 1 seed.
One guy never.
I think I won it actually when I was the 1
That's
seed.
That's hard, man.
Yeah,
that's hard.
I ran the table. I had a really good team. But that didn't matter. But
you know what? The fact that
they gotta know now that it's like this guy dominates one way or the other. That's it. That's what you gotta come to that. That's the realization. And I'm in your fantasy league. I'm gonna dominate one way or the other.
You know what I was about to do?
What's that?
Your fantasy maven card revoked because of your lack of fantasy involvement this year, sir.
What are you talking
about?
You
must earn that title back.
I'm in basketball. I play.
I'm just talking about the football scenario.
I had priorities.
But
I had priorities.
Yeah, but you didn't even do injuries, buys, nothing, and you still. You know how
draft a team.
You know how ridiculous. Well, forget about drafting. Like you can adjust on the fly.
You
know as well as I do free agency. Trades. But the thing is, you didn't even injury guys and
not even bye weeks.
Bye weeks, exactly. You had rosters that you were light players.
It shows you that the machine respected me and knew it had to give me a decent team, or I would be pissed.
Did you just say that?
That's what it was. That machine knew. It sensed me.
That's ridiculous.
By osmosis. 786-322-1105 if you want to get in on the program.